The evening of June 5th, a massive failure of a feeder water main pushes the city of Calgary into a state of local emergency.
It's a pretty major catastrophic water main failure.
Our experts say this is the most dramatic and traumatic break of the feeder main they have ever seen.
If our water usage continues to trend up and our water supply can't keep up, the taps will run dry at some point.
The Bears Paw South feeder main, a critical pipe that carries roughly 60% of the city's water, burst, flooding 16th Avenue and the businesses around it in the Bowness and Montgomery area, forcing nearby residents under a boil water advisory. But the break impacting every Calgarian, with the very real threat the city would run out of water if drastic measures weren't taken.
So the water that's coming out of our tap we can't drink. And we can apparently boil it for 2 minutes, but I'm not going to do that.
It's been a long night, okay? I'm boiling water. I got an extra kettle.
Well, I don't have any clean dishes, and then last night I couldn't flush my toilet.
Mandatory water restrictions were imposed for weeks. Calgarians were banned from any outdoor watering and were asked to limit their indoor water consumption. The situation was so dire, the city of San Diego even helped by shipping replacement pipes in an attempt to help with repairs. And the clock was ticking. With only 30 days until the Calgary Stampede, there was no room for mistakes. I'm Margot Rubin. Thanks for joining us as we dive into what went wrong with the Bears Paw feeder main and how the city managed to get things fixed in time for the greatest outdoor show on Earth. We will speak to Calgary Mayor Jody Gondek on the challenges the city faced, a crisis communication expert on how the crisis was managed, and an engineer on how the burst occurred and the state of Canada's water infrastructure.
This was an unprecedented event. You know, we've never really seen a water main break like this. As Calgary's mayor, or just in your career as a politician in general, have you ever dealt with a situation like this at this scale?
Nothing of this magnitude has happened in the time that I've served on council, so this was definitely something that was new, and it was something that was critical in terms of how we were going to manage it.
And so the water main break took place on June 5th, 1 month before Stampede, Calgary's biggest event of the year. Can you walk us through the process the city went through to get this in stable enough condition for the biggest event of the year?
So our goal was to get the water system and that feeder main back up and running to ensure that the water system was restored to full service. That was our goal. We knew that Stampede was coming, but that was not our driving point. Our major driver was to ensure that homes and businesses had access to safe, treated water as quickly as possible. Now, we were very fortunate that the Glenmore plant was able to pump enough water and provide enough supply to keep us all going, but that also hinged on Calgarians and regional partners' ability to reduce their water consumption. And I have to tell you, when it comes to Canadians, quite often if you just say please, they will do what you ask them to. And so when I ask people to please cut down their water use by flushing their toilet a little bit less, having shorter showers, and really thinking about where they were using water indoors, people came through. They reduced their water consumption by 25%, and that kept us whole, and we were able to keep water running.
And you know, you just talked about how you're more focused on the communities and people as opposed to Stampede, but was there ever any pressure though? Because I mean, it was about 4 weeks away. Was there ever any conversations about, you know, we might not have things in stable enough condition to have all these people from all over the world come to this city?
So the day that the water main break happened, the feeder main break, we were starting to host a conference of Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And we had several thousand people in town for that conference. And it was an immediate message to all of them as well. Thank you for coming to our city. We'd love you to live like a local. We've all got to reduce our water use. Could you please do the same? And then it just carried on that way. For anyone that was visiting our city, the message was the same. Family members were telling folks that were coming in to visit. Hotels joined in and told the people that were staying with them, could you please cut your water use? And people really rallied, and we did that. So I would say the biggest pressure for us was to make sure that Calgarians and our regional partners who rely on our water service could get back to regular use as quickly as possible. That was the pressure.
What do you think was your biggest challenge, from, you know, having to have workers on site 24 hours or to getting Calgarians to reduce their water use? What was the biggest challenge you faced throughout this crisis?
I would say in early days, we were trying to figure out what to communicate and how to communicate it to Calgarians. And we were all trying to figure out the roles that we played. What was the role of Chief Sue Henry at the Emergency Management Agency? What was my role as the mayor? What was the role of our administration? And as we were sorting all of that out and trying to figure out what happened and how we were going to manage this, it became abundantly clear that we needed to communicate better. And so I was on site on Thursday, so this happened on a Wednesday night. Thursday afternoon, I was with the crews that were trying to dewater the site. They explained to me what had happened. They talked to me about the type of pipe. They explained to me how they would do the repairs and how optimistic they were that they could do all of this very quickly. The crews knew they had the skill and they had the parts, and they were looking forward to getting in there and getting the work done. And then all of a sudden we found out that we had 5 hotspots. So I would say probably the 2 trickiest moments were going from not knowing what to communicate to making a firm commitment and saying on the Sunday, I'll be with you twice a day, letting you know what's going on. I am sorry we have not communicated well enough with all of you. That was the first point. And then the second point was about a week later having to say to Calgarians, yes, the original break is fixed. Now we have another issue. We've got 5 more areas that need repair immediately. And so those were probably the 2 most challenging moments, and I would say probably the most heartbreaking one was when we found out that 2 people were injured on site. And let's not forget the residents of Bowness that had a boil water advisory. So there's a lot of times my heart went out to people, and there was times that we had to pause and say, what are we going to do next? And we had to quickly rally and figure out the plan to move forward.
There was a bit of criticism in that first week on the city's communication. You pivoted very fast, and then you went from doing 2 live streams a day. Do you think that was necessary? How would you kind of rate you evolving your communication over that month?
I would say that was a pivotal moment. Being on site, looking at what had happened to the feeder main, and then going out to Bowness within the next couple of days and finding out what the experience of residents was, what was happening to businesses there, and picking up the phone and calling CAO David Duckworth and saying, we've got to do better. People need to know exactly what's happening. And then starting the next morning, delivering the message of here's what's happened, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and here's what we need from you. And we value you rallying with us to cut down your water use. We know it's difficult, but if we do this together, we'll be okay. I think just accepting the fact that we didn't get communications right from the outset was an important step. It's important for leaders to understand when they could have done better and then to do better.
And I know the infrastructure was put in place in the 1970s. Are you concerned about the state of Calgary's water infrastructure right now? How can we know something like this isn't going to happen in the future?
We know now that the technology we need to deploy in terms of monitoring needs to be amped up. And so I think tech companies are working closely with us to figure out what we can do. And I think this is going to apply to every city in Canada, if not North America. All of us have very similar infrastructure. I would say Calgary is probably in a slightly better position than most because our city's young. And so a lot of our infrastructure and our pipes in the ground are polyethylene or PVC. And so that's a much more resilient material. So we're in a good place in terms of the overall network, but obviously we have to pay attention to those pieces that have that precast concrete pipe. And we have to look at ways of strengthening it or delivering an alternative method of getting water from the feeder main or from the plant into the rest of the system.
And lastly, what do you think Calgarians can learn from this?
I think there's many lessons for all of us to learn. As a Calgarian, I now understand my water consumption patterns, and I'm much better at understanding when to turn the tap off and what to do with the water when it's running, when you're waiting for your shower to heat up. It's a great idea to take that bucket and use it for the front planters. So I think I've learned many lessons about my own water consumption. I can tell you, being out in community with Calgarians over the last 5 or 6 weeks, everyone's got stories to tell about, I didn't know that this is how much water I was using. So I think that's been a big lesson for Calgarians about how precious water is and how we're using it. And I think the other really significant thing for our city and probably cities across this country are the ways in which we need to strengthen our infrastructure, and knowing that we can't do it alone, and continuing with the advocacy that we have been taking to the federal government to say, we really need your help. We really need you to be investing in cities, in their infrastructure. So the work carries on. The lessons that we will learn from this, we will gladly share with all other municipalities, and we will keep people fully aware of the things that we uncover. Our goal is to be responsible, to take accountability for this, and to deliver messaging transparently about what happened, why it happened, and how we'll make sure it never happens again.
But how good was that messaging? Gondek says it got better as the crisis went on. Many Calgarians disagreed. Coming up, we'll speak with a crisis communication expert for his opinion on how she and the City of Calgary handled their communication.
Every once in a while, let the wheel take the wheel. The new 2024 Ford F-150 with Blue Cruise hands-free highway driving.
There's still time to turn your summer plans into the plans of the summer. Get a small flavored cold brew, smoothie, or frappe for just $3 plus tax. Only during summer drink days at McDonald's.
We all start on different bases, and only some of us make it safely home. Anyone can get stuck on first. Without a clear path to home base, there are over 235,000 Canadians experiencing homelessness every year. Raising the Roof is on a mission to help all those in need find a safe place to call home. With every purchase of a Raising the Roof baseball cap, you are helping us get one step closer to ending homelessness in Canada. Visit raisingtheroof.org to get yours today, because everyone deserves a home base.
New Beneful Incredibites. Serve a little joy in every bite. Beneful gives them big taste just for small dogs. With real veggies and chicken, salmon, or lamb, it's variety your small dog is going to love. Joyful, healthful Beneful.
Is that a cheese string? I'll trade you my bagel for it.
How about my pirate's treasure?
Mystery or?
I offer Cthulhu, the World Eater. I'll stick with the cheese string.
Keep it cheesy. Cheese strings, only from Black Diamond.
Looking for the most comfortable, stylish, easiest pants around? Try new Skechers Slip-In Pants. Just slip in and experience Skechers' innovative comfort technology fabric that's breathable, wrinkle-free, and moves with you. Look great and be comfy in Skechers Slip-In Pants.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in an ambulance, a police car, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more.
We're as obsessed with your dog's health as you. That's why Acana dog food is rich with animal ingredients, balanced with vegetables and fruit. These ingredients work together to help support key health benefits you can see working. Acana, we're obsessively Canadian.
Mayor Jody Gondek says one of the biggest challenges during the feeder main break event was communication. Last time Calgary experienced a crisis of this magnitude was the Alberta floods that took place a decade ago in 2013. Benjamin Morgan, crisis communication expert, worked with then Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi during the floods. He says there are parallels to be drawn between those two events and how both mayors handled the crises.
At the end of the day, when we're in the midst of a crisis event, we really need to understand the role of the elected officials. And in an ideal state, if you asked really any crisis manager, they would say the elected official role is outside of the Emergency Operations Center. Let us do what we need to do. The elected officials are the voice of the people, right? So they are the ones that are responsible for connecting with their citizens, their community, their constituents, their voters, to make sure that they are receiving the information that they need to. That information should be coming from the communication teams to those electeds, and then from the electeds to their constituents, as well as from the administration teams. You may have seen during the 2013 floods, Naheed Nenshi, we ended up calling it, he would speak to the heart. So his message wasn't, we've re-energized 25% of the power grid. His message was, I was in the community last night and I saw how much you're hurting. Know that we're here for you. And then they would bring the Director of Emergency Management up, who would then talk about, we've re-energized 25% of the energy grid, if you will. That worked very, very well. It was Theodore Roosevelt who said it many, many years ago, and it's people want to know that you care before they care what you know. And so when you upfront messaging with care and empathy, you end up with a greater chance of connecting with your audience. And in many ways, I think Mayor Gondak took that same approach. She took to those 2 daily media briefings, talked from the heart, and then brought up Chief Henry from Calgary Emergency Management Agency and their general managers of infrastructure to talk about the specific details. So in that comparison, I think it worked really well for them.
So you've been in the crisis communication space for a very long time. What does good communication look like in a crisis?
Well, certainly when we talk about crisis and disaster, in our shop we use the language high stress, high concern. So when your audience is feeling highly stressed or highly concerned, we know through research and science that the way in which your brain processes information changes. So when I'm feeling highly stressed, highly concerned, I process information differently. If I don't change my communication approach when I'm talking to somebody who is feeling highly stressed and highly concerned, I have up to an 80% chance of having my message lost. So really effective crisis communications we follow the principles of Dr. Vincent Cavello, and that is, in this event, there's so much information to share. It's like you want to bring a whole big plate of food to your audience. Here's everything we have to offer you. But when people are feeling stressed or concerned, it's almost like they've lost their appetite. So we have to spoon feed, just give them short bits of information. We use the magic number 3. So take as much information as you have, put it into pieces of 3, and help your audience digest what they need to do. In many cases, it can just feel overwhelming, and we end up losing a lot of our message through that brain processing when people are feeling stressed or concerned.
Just overall, how do you think the city handled the water crisis? Do you think they did a good job, bad job? How would you rate their handling of the situation?
Hindsight is always 20/20. At the end of the day, I think the communication goals on behalf of the City of Calgary was to get that water use reduced, right? It was so important that they kept the water reservoirs holding enough water available for structure fires, for health, safety, critical water use. We did see a couple structure fires during that event. And so at the end of the day, if you followed along the timelines, for the most part, that water use came down. So if I objectively look at the communication efforts on behalf of the city, what was the goal? Reduce water use. What was the outcome? Water use was reduced.
While Calgarians did manage to reduce their water consumption and the city didn't run out of water, the break was a harsh wake-up call for municipalities across the country. Ahead, what exactly caused the burst and how likely is it something like this could happen again here in Calgary or in another Canadian city?
I'm Joan, and I'm your first Golden Bachelorette.
Two teen burgers for 2 teens.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Have they, spoken?
They haven't just spoken once.
Talk to him. Is he looking over here?
I think he just saw us.
Okay.
I feel like we kind of lost that.
What's all this? We said a piece of art.
What about a gallery wall?
A gallery oh. For these prices, make it a gallery room.
Oh. Deal so good, everyone approves. HomeSense.
Italy.
KFC's $5 sandwich of the day is back, only in Canada.
Have a great trip.
What? Sit down.
Not everyone's happy, but you will be.
Oh, sorry. Yo.
We all bring something different to the table. Ben's Original. We're all original recipes.
New Yukon ice cream bars from Chapman's, with the taste as big as Canada's North.
For everything you care about, Intact Insurance.
That's the DQ Cheeseburger Lovers Deal. 2 singles for $6 or 2 doubles for $8 for a limited time. So, how is it? A deal this good speaks for itself, I guess. DQ, happy tastes good.
I've dedicated my life to helping victims.
To seeking justice.
And justice will be served.
We're working as a team.
And that team works most effectively when it works together.
You're safe. I got you. All of us want the same thing.
Justice.
Justice.
Justice for every victim.
So you're not giving up on us. Giving up? I'm just getting started.
Calgary's feeder water main burst was a stark reminder of how much we can rely on a single piece of infrastructure. Knowing what led to the pipe burst will help the city avoid this catastrophic event from happening again. Carrie Black, assistant professor of engineering at the University of Calgary, takes us back to the site to answer that question.
So there's a lot of factors that come into answering that question. So yes, it's older infrastructure. I wouldn't say it's old, but it's older. 50 plus years since it's been installed, and so typically we see a longer lifespan for those kinds of pipes. Not the case in this situation. So the cause there was a pretty catastrophic failure. Normally we'll get a little bit of insight into something's going wrong, or there might be loss of pressure, there might be signs of cracking if you inspect it or if you hear it with acoustic monitoring. We didn't really have any of that in this case. It just broke. And when they took the pipe out, we could see there was exposed wires, there was some pretty major sections that had broken. And so that's a sign that we probably had over time, slowly deteriorating pipes. So if there's a crack in the pipe and those wires that are meant to be protected are exposed, they can start to corrode really quickly. And so as soon as those wires corrode, they keep the pipe really strong. And they start to break, the concrete's no longer as strong as it used to be, and it's just a matter of time before they fail. And so that could be from a number of different causes. Could be the way that it was installed, the way that it was manufactured, over time, construction nearby and around, surrounding. So there's a lot of factors that go into determining exactly what caused it, but that's kind of how the pipe failed in this case.
Just walk us through how big the burst was.
Yeah, so think of it as a pretty major highway. That's really what's flowing most of the cars in and out of the city. That's what's happening with this feeder pipe. So it comes, directly from where we're getting our water supply, in this case the reservoir, and it's being fed to all the homes across the city, upwards of 60% from this section. And so it comes from a really big pipe and goes to lots of little pipes throughout the city. When a little pipe breaks, you're maybe talking about a small area of the neighborhood, small section. When the main feeder pipe breaks, we're looking at a huge failure across the whole system. And so that's what happened in this case. The main feeder pipe, or the main highway for the water to get to all of those homes and businesses, is now completely collapsed. So it's a pretty major catastrophic water main failure that we don't typically see.
According to Black, pipes in the early 70s were allowed to be built with thinner wires, which ran the risk of corroding faster if exposed, leading to catastrophic pipe bursts that happened in places like San Diego and other parts of California.
It's too soon to tell whether or not that's what happened in this case, but this kind of pipe, and what everyone should realize, is this kind of pipe is used in a lot of different municipalities across North America, still commonly used to this day. And so it shouldn't make people doubt the way that the infrastructure is manufactured or built, but it's important to recognize that there could be some things that happened during that time period that we're now facing the direct results from.
Black warns it's not just a problem within the city of Calgary. These issues are nationwide.
In the Canadian context, we have a massive infrastructure deficit, and that is very true in water wastewater. So a lot of those pipes are getting to their end of life, and because we grew so quickly, around the same time, we have many municipalities that are going to need to replace that infrastructure at the same time. And so if you have that sort of burden, financial burden, all at the same time, it's cost prohibitive. It's too much for municipalities to bear the weight of that. So there's a couple options. We can start slowly replacing. Some municipalities do that. Slowly replacing over time so that you can ensure that you have the resources to fix that infrastructure long term, or we have to get supports from the provincial and federal government to be able to make those repairs. We certainly have an infrastructure crisis, and we're heading to a point where, a tipping point some would say, where it's going to be too deep and too much that we have to take on. But it shouldn't make you think that everything does need to be repaired and replaced right this minute. It's normal to have older pipes in the ground. They are meant and designed to last much longer than people, I think, realize.
But Black says this event could lead to a call to action to invest more in our water systems.
We don't have the budgets that we need to be able to do what we need to do in water infrastructure and wastewater infrastructure. So sure, there's a lot of great technologies that exist out there to look at the pipeline integrity, but they're really cost prohibitive for municipalities. So unless we're willing to pay more for our water, there's only so much that we can do, and I think cities are doing the best they can, but we're all going to have to come together and find ways to better fund our infrastructure and to really show, put our money where our mouth is and put our money where we think it's the most important and most used, because we do have to value our infrastructure. If we don't, we're going to be facing failures like this even more in the future.
We make junk disappear by giving it a new purpose. We donate the donatables and recycle the recyclables. And any organic materials are taken for composting. All you have to do is point. Call 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Employee pricing is back at Lacombe Ford. You pay what we pay with discounts of up to $19,000 off. Plus, stop in for a test drive. You could win $5,000. Whether you're in Calgary, Edmonton, or anywhere in between, Lacombe Ford makes it easy.
I don't care what the law is. I will never be a slave. That word, I hate it. It rests on my tongue like rot.
Peter, how does it feel to get paid for your work?
There are rumors freedom's coming for us all.
Freedom, you know that's all I want.
Chloe, careful. Vrooman would rather sell you across the river to America than let you go free.
Then I'll run.
I've run before. Maybe this time for good.
No! No! Just get her into a boat. No!
Chloe? Chloe, no!
Word of Chloe Cooley's resistance led to Canada's first legislation limiting slavery. After 200 years, slavery was abolished in Canada in 1834.
Arctic foxes are perfectly adapted for Arctic life, turning white in winter to blend in with the snow and transforming in the warmer months to match the tundra. These sly hunters possess keen senses, detecting the slightest movements beneath the snow.
Continued efforts to reduce our ecological footprint will help ensure Arctic fox families continue to thrive in Canada's north.
To learn more, visit hww.ca.
Welcome to Sportsnet Central. I'm Ivanka Osmak, and this is
everything I need, all in the Sportsnet app.
Ken.
Podcast.
Big trade today.
Breaking news. Highlights.
Oh! A critical win for the Blue Jays.
Live streams on Sportsnet Plus.
Up to Den and Buck.
Thanks, Jay. Ken, get up, get out of here.
It's all here.
Ken, where have you been?
Oh, you know, just tapping the app.
The feeder main break wasn't just a test of Calgary's crisis response. And going forward, it's not just about infrastructure investment. It's about reshaping the way we think about water.
We use more water than we absolutely need. And I'm hoping that this event actually made people realize that they don't need to use as much water as they were using before, and they start to conserve. Because the solution to this isn't finding more water, it's going to be to reduce and reuse water in a more sustainable way.
The city was able to welcome the world to the Calgary Stampede without the fear of running out of water. But the water main is still a focus for the city and will be for some time. On August 26, Calgary will see a return of water restrictions as the city makes urgent repairs to more than a dozen spots along the feeder main that it has labeled as points of weakness. The city says getting repairs done in September will help lower the risk of a water main break in the winter when river flows and water supply are too low to refill the reservoir. I'm Margot Rubin. Thanks for watching this edition of City News Connect.